Yeah, we got to talk about it. This may or may not affect taxpayers, but I think it's important for you to know and be aware of so you can adapt, adjust, and know how to operate if this goes into motion. That being said, Elon Musk DOGE begins IRS audit. So here's what you need to know about this. At least one member of the Department of Government Efficiency visited the IRS offices in Washington on Thursday as Elon Musk cost-cutting group prepares to audit the agency. It was first time that a Musk aide had entered the building, raising fears of cuts to the tax-collecting agency, which has long been a target of Republicans. So why it matters? The Trump administration and Musk DOGE, which the president has tapped to shrink the size of the federal government, have been cutting thousands of federal jobs in the past few weeks. DOGE, which recently faced widespread condemnation for its unfettered access to sensitive documents, is now ready to review the IRS operations after President Trump authorized its audit on Thursday. So a lot of things are being observed, and a lot of improper spending of taxpayers' dollars are a topic of discussion. And if this is all true, this could be very beneficial for the government, the economy, and even there are talks of kicking back some of the dollars to taxpayers in the form of a check due to their savings in the area of multi billions. So this could come back and directly have a benefit to you. But we still got to question things. We still got to be aware of certain things so you just don't get caught up or emotionally attached to who's doing what in a way that you think they only have your best interest at heart without having their own agenda. So look at it from both ways. How can I benefit? What are the opportunities? But also, is there any detriment that can be caused from this? So the Internal Revenue Service will be looked at like everybody else, Trump said Thursday from the White House. So while Trump and Musk have justified the cuts as necessary to fight inefficiency, alleged fraud, and corruption in federal agencies, many fear the impact these moves could have on the functioning of the government. Cuts to the IRS workforce could potentially affect the agency's capacity to collect taxes for the federal government and delay refunds to taxpayers. So could this cause tax refund delays due to them cutting back? I feel as though it shouldn't, because some of the people that they've cut back were just recently hired. They were still going through their probationary period, and they've had more than enough people to get taxes processed over the several years before these people were even hired. That's just in that area, and that's just my perspective. So what to know? On Thursday, DOGE member Gavin basically entered the IRS offices in Washington, D.C. and made several requests, including a description of the work that each of the agency's business units does and what risks they face. And this was reported by CNN. Now, an IRS employee told Wall Street Journal that Kliger seemed interested in the agency's headcount and asked for meetings with senior IRS officials. The agency, in the midst of the busiest time of tax filing season, has about 100,000 workers. No operational changes or layoffs concerning the IRS have been announced yet. There was also no indication that Kliger access the IRS computer system or taxpayers' information, so they don't know that yet. But an email received by IRS employees during his visit and shared with CNN said anyone getting an inbound on a group of high-profile visitors to the IRS should have them send their query to the inbox. We've elevated this inquiry to Treasury. We're awaiting further instructions. So earlier this month, Musk launched a poll on social media, and this was pretty big. I found this to be pretty interesting. And I know a lot of people favor Musk on Twitter or X, but people still have the ability to vote how they feel. And this is what they said. So on the social media platform, he asked users if they favor DOGE auditing the IRS. A staggering majority, 91.2% of those who responded to his informal poll voted to audit the agency, while 8.2% voted against it. So a big majority said, nah, I want them to be audited. And I think it comes from the fear that people have towards the IRS. They're looking at it like, hold on, we've always feared this entity, and now there's an opportunity for them to be audited. Could they be doing things that have been detrimental, to the people or the taxpayers? So they're all for it, just based off the history of the IRS being entity that has been feared. Now, I have been one of those who have said that the IRS definitely has some benefits because it's one of the entities that provides the most education when it comes to ways to legally minimize your tax liability. So I'm supportive of the education that has been provided, because it does give people the ability to find ways to legally lower their tax liability. Now, some of it is feeling like jumping through hoops and having to find different codes and things of that nature is not as clear as it could and should be. So I don't like that part of it. However, I've benefited from utilizing their information, the tax codes, etc. What are your thoughts? I want to know below, what do you think personally about that as we dive in deeper? Now, the IRS has already been hit hard by Trump's executive order on January 20th, which froze hiring for all federal agencies except military personnel of the armed forces or positions related to immigration enforcement, national security, or public safety. While the other is set to expire after 90 days for all executive departments and agencies, it will remain in effect for the IRS until the Secretary of the Treasury, in consultation with the Director of OMB and the administration of the USDS, determines that it is the national interest to lift the freeze. So right now, that's what it is. So here's what people are saying. You got the senator, basically a Democrat of Oregon, basically on X, said, my office is hearing that DOGE is now at the IRS. That means Musk's henchmen are in a position to dig through a trove of data about every taxpayer in America. And if your refund is delayed, they could very well be the reason. So they're looking at it from an angle of information, which I respect that perspective, because they're looking at it like, okay, they're getting access to information. Some people looking at it like, well, this person used to own PayPal, they got access to information that's not going to be a benefit. But in the world of AI, artificial intelligence, and the ability to take information, extract it, and do several different things with it, it is a solid concern. It is a solid concern. So I'm not opposed to a person thinking. I just want you to be thinking. Some people don't think at all. They just go with the flow. No, you have to be thinking and wondering, what are the pros and what are the cons? How can you adapt and adjust to the cons if it does have a negative impact? Or how can you adjust and adapt and benefit from the pros? Just be thinking. You don't have to agree with me, but just be thinking. And having critical thinking is key. And we lack a lot of that in this day and age. So, Christian Winston, a former Trump senior advisor, told Sky News Australia that it's a great move. It's poetic justice for the IRS to be facing scrutiny since they scrutinize the rest of us. I told you, some people who voted was based on them always fearing the IRS, and that's what they felt. They were like, hey, I want to see it. This is justice served, So let's keep going. So Republican Jason Smith basically told the IRS acting commissioner, business as usual at the IRS is unacceptable. President Trump has shown in his first 3 weeks that he meant what he said during the presidential campaign. Our government has not been working effectively for the American people, and it needs to change. We will be watching closely to make certain that the IRS timely complies with all laws, executive orders, direction from the Secretary of the Treasury, and requests from the House Committee on Ways and Means and the Senate Committee on Finance. So, some people are against it, some people are for it. It just all depends on your perspective and how you're viewing it. So what happens next? Basically, on Thursday, a reporter asked Trump if he expected DOGE to close the IRS. No, I don't expect it, he said. But I think the IRS will be looked at like everybody else. Just about everybody is going to be looked at. They're doing a hell of a job, he added, calling DOGE employees the force of super geniuses. Because when you do the math or you look at the things that they've discovered, if you've been paying attention, because you can follow it on Twitter, they have a separate website that also talks about the things that they've been doing. And they're making it pretty public in terms of who they're targeting, what they're finding, and Trump has spoke on it. There's been certain documentation. So it's things that you can track to see whether or not you agree with some of the things that they're doing. So I do respect that angle of it. But when you look and see, hold on, our taxpayer dollars have been going where? Like, I challenge you just to go, if you care to do so, look at some of the things that have been put out. And I put some out as well, so make sure you stay plugged in. But look at some of the things that have been put out about where the taxpayer dollars have been going. And it can be mind-blowing. Can be kind of mind-boggling. Because it's like, oh, this is where our money was going? It makes sense for us to decrease some of the excess that was going out and increase some that goes back to the taxpayers. But still be mindful of whether or not this doesn't have a separate agenda associated with it based on the people who have the power and the ability to go into these documents or these entities and see where they are doing things in a way that doesn't benefit the American people. So it's very interesting. It's very deep. One of the things that I was blown away with is how many people was listed as if they were 300 years old, 200 years old, 150 years old, still receiving Social Security. And the list goes on and on and on. You let me know your thoughts. If you are on the verge of looking for someone to position you to maximize your tax refund, lower your tax liability, there'll be a link available in the description. See you on the next one. Salute. Mr. Smith signing out.